30 seconds and counting.
Hey, what's good, y'all? Welcome back to another video. It's Anish. I'm joined with Roman and Drew, and today we're doing another Texans podcast episode, and we're going to be talking about the Texans head coaching search. And before I begin, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below for more Texans content. And so today we got some news that the Texans finally had their second interview with Jonathan Gannon in person in Houston. And there hasn't been any recent news as of the time of this recording. So maybe he's still in the building. Maybe they're working something out. Maybe it's done. Maybe it still hasn't started yet. We don't know. But it is happening. And so he looks like to be the front runner for the Texans head coach job. Obviously, we've heard a lot of things like Josh McCown's got a second interview. And he seems to be like a pretty high favorite for the job. But it's still a lot of uncertainty. Like even Brian Flores, a guy who a lot of people thought would be hired really quickly, still hasn't been hired by any team. So he's probably still in the mix. So it's very interesting. So Drew and Roman, what do y'all think about Jonathan Gannon? At least let's start with him.
Gannon is 100% my guy. He's been my guy for a while. I just think that he brings so much to the table. He's a guy who's a leader. He's been a defensive coordinator. He's been throughout the league in many aspects. He was a scout. I think that's something him and Nick Caserio can really relate to. And if you just look at like a lot about what people say about him is he's really smart, a really analytical guy, high energy. He knows a lot about the X and O's, and he's just a fantastic guy too. Players really love him. If you look at there's this thing between him and Fletcher Cox. They didn't really agree with like what Jonathan Gannon was doing. Jonathan Gannon had to explain it to him. And of course, earlier in the season, Jonathan Gannon had told the Eagles brass, "Hey, put all your chips in the basket for the offense. I'm going to be the sacrificial lamb. I'm going to put together a scheme for where we can just, use the guys that we have." And they ended up finishing 10th in defense overall. Fletcher Cox didn't really like it earlier in the season. He adjusted. Him and Jonathan Gannon talked it out. Turns out they were perfectly fine after that. So he can talk to players. He can come up with a scheme for just the teensy bit of talent that's on the defense. Something that you saw with the Texans. Lovie Smith made a couple improvements. But man, Jonathan Gannon can put together anything he wants. He's more of a too high safety kind of guy. A lot of cover 2, a lot of cover 4. But I think if you gave him talent defensively, he could put together something really good. And even going back to his days with the Vikings, he was only an assistant coach there, keep in mind, an assistant defensive backs coach. People were saying that he's going to be a head coach in the future. This is back in 2016, 2017. People in the organization just knew that he was going to grow into being a future head coach. And right now, he just has all the traits that I want in a head coach, all the traits that I think Nick Caserio wants in a head coach, and I think he'd be the perfect fit for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, a bunch of people, including myself. When we first heard about the news, I wasn't really about the news that we were planning to put on an interview request. I wasn't really the highest. I really wasn't too excited. I thought it was just like a type of interview that's like, hey, let's go out, meet new guys, see what they're all about, that type of thing. But then the more I read about him, the more I see about him, the more videos I watch. He's a very good talker. It shows that he's a very good leader. And then the thing about him being a sacrificial lamb, that's really huge. Like that's something that you really value. Like he put his coaching career on the line in a way. I mean, I guess not exactly. I don't think the Eagles would have fired him for that because he took sacrificial land. But that's something that could not let you get another job somewhere else. And I guess obviously now it's not really changing that. But that's something that I really, really value. Like that's how he shows leadership there. He shows heart, everything. And if we were to hire him, I wouldn't really be too mad either. Like he's probably one of my top 2 favorite choices. It's either between KOC or Gannon. And the thing about him being a former scout is really, really, really big for us. Being the head coach, being a former scout, being able to evaluate talent, see who really can play, who really can't play, see who can fit in what scheme. That's really, really huge. As far as when we go to the draft, we're likely going to have a bunch of draft picks, whether trading down or whatnot. But it's gonna be huge for us. Having a coach that can scout talent, has an eye for talent, and can probably have a very good relationship with Nick Casario, who is also very heavily involved in the scouting department. So yeah, Gannon, I think he would be A plus hire as of yet, but like probably like A minus, solid A for me if we were hiring.
Yeah, I think Gannon's not like the sexiest hire, but when you like look deeper into him as like a potential candidate, he seems to be pretty promising. And like if you look at what coaching staff he could bring, he probably has probably the better connections out of the other candidates. Because he could bring Zimmer as his defensive coordinator. Who knows if that's a possibility, but that could be something. And Clint Kubiak, obviously, both are on the Vikings, and so Clint Kubiak is very interesting. A lot of people say he's very smart, but some Vikings fans don't really they really want him gone. But it's just like a weird dynamic between those two. I don't want to delve too much into the that relationship between him and Zimmer, but apparently Zimmer like was forcing him to run the ball more, forcing him to do things that he didn't really want to do. So they didn't get a good look at what Clint Kubiak could really do. As far as Gannon, the major complaint against him is that his defense underperformed against the talented quarterbacks and performed like they should have against like the subpar quarterbacks. And it was also one thing to note that like defenses they need a few games to like really mesh together, gel together, and really be a cohesive unit. And it's just unfortunate that they started to get all like the subpar quarterbacks on their schedule on the later half of the season. So it just unfortunately lined up that way. But when they started to click, they did a really good job of doing that. And so, like Roman mentioned, like working as a scout, that's definitely very intriguing. I think that's what caught Nick's eye about being a scout, and like being a coach and a scout, something what Nick Casario has done similarly, because Nick Casario was a wide receivers coach. So sharing a similar type of background has to be intriguing for Nick Casario, and he does fit that path, I guess, because he only has 1 year as a defensive coordinator, similar to Tomlin. So that's just yet another thing. But yeah, we'll have to see what Jonathan Gannon could be, but I'd be pretty excited. And I guess like just compared to whatever the rest of the competition is, he seems to be like one of the front runners for me, I guess. But let's talk about the next candidate on our minds, Josh McCown, and someone who we thought should not be a candidate for any other coaching process or hire, but he's being considered, like seriously considered by the Texans to be the next head coach. And the when I try to think of this in like in an objective lens, like are the Texans a very desirable destination? Because if they're trying to looking at these out of box hires and Josh McCown, are they like? Is it because like some candidates are not genuinely interested in us, and so we have to opt for guys like McCown? But then again, it's just hard to look past McCown's zero coaching experience. Yes, there's a lot of great things that are going for him. Like the players love him, but to me, it's just a tough sell, especially to the fan base who needs some normalcy. But then again, it's like a rebuild, so might as well take a risk. But what are y'all's opinions on McCown?
It's just such a weird out of the box hire that either is going to make Nick Casario look like a genius or an idiot. I see the positives to having him, being a quarterback, being around the league, playing for 12 teams, being in the league for over 15 years. He should have a sense of experience that not even all coaches have. Some say he's really been a quarterback's coach for the last 6 years of his career at the least. He's just been learning so much. I'm sure he knows how to run a practice. I'm sure he knows how to talk to players. I'm sure that he can make sharper decisions than David Coley did. You saw that he had time management problems. He didn't know when to call a timeout. He even got antsy and said, "Hey, screw this. They don't deserve to get another chance on third down." I feel like McCown would make the right decisions on the field. I still think it would take him time to develop, but man, he has never coached in the NFL. playing and coaching is just so different from each other. I don't know how he'd be able to manage it. You, what I said before, it's really just things that he could be good at, but we don't know if he's going to be good at that. So personally, I believe the Texans do not think that he's ready. I think McCown will be on the Texans staff at some capacity, if that's associate head coach, if that's quarterbacks coach, if that's offensive coordinator. I think he'll be on the staff. I think that he deserves a shot to be a coach because he's just such a smart guy. He knows all the X and O's. If he was the offensive coordinator, first he could put together a good scheme, but I don't see Nick Cassera putting all his eggs in a basket with Josh McCown as his head coach.
Yeah, personally, I've seen a bunch of people hate on it on Twitter, on Reddit, all of that, all the social medias. But personally, I don't think I would really hate it. I mean, it's not the most sexiest hire. You're gonna get a bunch of hate for it. National media hate, Houston media hate, everything. But in reality, I mean, we're a rebuilding team. As Anish was saying, we're a rebuilding team. Why not try something new? What if we found the next big thing at head coach? Like, there's always a possibility. But then at the same time, I just don't think he's ready. Like, he was a former QB, and he wasn't even a starter for that long. Really, he was just like a kind of like a bounce around quarterback, backup here and there, started a few games here and there. And I think his winning record is like 27-75 or something wild like that. Like he's a wild win to loss ratio. So he doesn't even really know how to win, I guess. I mean, it doesn't mean much as a player. Like it's two different things as a player and as a coach. But it's just one thing to say like he doesn't really know how to win as a player. So what makes you think he can win as a coach? But my argument against that is like it's two different things, two completely different things. If you can put together a good game plan, and he has a bunch of good relationships with different players in the locker room, different players all around the NFL. A bunch of people have massive respect for him. And we all saw in the last week when he was first interviewed for head coach last week for the Houston Texans. We all saw the support by players like Kamu Grugier-Hill, I think Malik Collins, and just a bunch of Houston Texans players showed their support for him in the comments. So it just shows how much of a stand-up guy he is. But is he exactly ready to be a head coach? I don't think so, but I don't think he would be the worst if we were to hire him. Like, sure, he needs more time, but you're only going to learn to be a head coach as a head coach. Like, you're not going to learn to be a head coach being an OC. I mean, I guess you could learn from the head coach that you're being an OC for, but it's not the same. Like, there's a difference between having head coach experience and having an OC experience becoming a head coach. But yeah, I wouldn't be mad at it, but I just personally don't think he's ready just.
Yeah, I think for Nick too, if you were to hire McCown, either he fully believes in Josh McCown or he has 100% job security until the end of his contract. And it really also shows that but I don't know, just like more on Josh McCown, just like if you really have use a lot of mental gymnastics in a way, like there are some like positives to McCown, like him being in so many locker rooms means that you could probably develop a good culture. Players, current and former players, NFL legends like Steve Smith have said a lot of good things about McCown, saying that I'm not surprised he's getting head coach interviews. And some people are saying like, hey, he's been like an unofficial quarterbacks coach in like the last 5 years of his career. So like that there's some ways like where you can try to work around to justify Josh McCown as a possible head coach. And again, like some people are better as a head coach than like a coordinator. Same thing for Gannon. He could be a better head coach than coordinator. Some people are the other way around. Sometimes they're a better coordinator than head coach. We just don't know. It's just like an absolute like mystery on like it's like as hard as like in drafting. Like you don't know who's gonna like eventually pan out, who's not. Same thing with this coaching hire. Like even the hottest candidates out there end up being like the worst. Like Urban Meyer last coaching cycle, he was one of the hottest head coach candidates, and he like burned like it was a crashing plane. It was an absolute disaster. So we never know with these candidates like whether they're gonna pan out or not. But it's just that the Texans haven't proven to the fan base that they can do these unorthodox things. Like they haven't like yeah, there's nothing for them to be like merit these kinds of actions. But like Roman said and Drew said, like if they're already gonna get hate for it, hate for whatever they do, might as well do something that they believe in. And if they hate us, right? So I don't think Nick Cassera really cares about the media too much. Honestly, he probably just thinks like I'm just gonna do my thing. But those are my thoughts on McCown. It's I really hope we don't hire him because there are some better candidates out there. And speaking of better candidates, Brian Flores, a guy who we thought would be hired pretty quickly, is still available. And yes, there's a lot of uncertainty about Brian Flores, and it's actually like almost a red flag that he hasn't been hired yet. And there's a lot of reasons for that. It's because there's been a lot of press put out that he's having problems with like building relationships, either with quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, the power struggle with the GM and owner, and he was cited to be really stubborn and non-collaborative with his coaching staff. And yeah, there's a high turnover at his offensive coordinator position. Three offensive coordinators in the 3 years he was there. So all of those are big red flags, but there's a lot of pros to him. And Drew and Roman, if you want to go get into those things.
I think that he's one of the best leader of men you could have as a head coach. And also with the turnover that he had on the Dolphins, you have to remember the season he came in, they were going to tank for Tua. They ended up going 5-11, and they still ended up getting Tua, but they had the sixth pick in the NFL draft. Of course, that wasn't exactly what they expected. They probably thought they had to get the first pick to get Tua. But of course, Brian Flores, that's the first season that he, overperformed. The next season they went 10-6. They still missed the playoffs, but he overperformed. And then of course next year they started out 1-7 and they finished with 9 wins. So he won 8 out of his last 9 games. That's absolutely incredible for any coach to do, considering how bad the beginning of the season was. So the fact that Brian Flores can do that much of so much little talent on the team went through 3 offensive coordinators. So if Brian Flores can get some stability in there for Davis Mills, if he can hire the right offensive coordinator, hence the possibility of having Pep Hamilton or Josh McCown on the staff, that could be some stability there. So if he can put the right guys around him, if he can have a better roster than he had in Miami, the sky's the limit for Brian Flores.
Yeah, my biggest thing on Brian Flores is the thing that came out with Tua Tagovailoa. It was where Brian Flores basically said, "Oh, should have drafted so and so over you," or something like that, something around that realm, that thing. But if he were to come to Houston, say something like that to Mills, I mean, not saying he would, but like just gonna over here said something to Mills, hurt his confidence, like that would be like that ruined the relationship between Tua and Flores. So who's to say it wouldn't ruin more relationships here? I've seen some people compare him to a Bill O'Brien in a sense. But honestly, I don't think he would be the worst head coach. We all see how good of a defensive mind he is. And one of the biggest positives for me is how he adjusted in that Baltimore Ravens versus Miami Dolphins game. I think it was like on a Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football or something like that. But he made a very, very good adjustment. Like in the first quarter, the Ravens looked like they were probably going to win the game, pretty much controlling the game, the run game, as they always do. And then Brian Flores came out and he basically did all out blitz, like a zero blitz every single play. And it worked. Like every single play, he was blitzing the same blitz, the same type of blitz at least, and it was working. And that's something that Brian Flores should be credited with. I'm sure he was one of the main. Of course, the defense coordinator had to have some say in it, but of course, Brian Flores had to have some say of man. I'm sorry, had to have some type of say, of course, as well. And if he can do something like that here in Houston, if he were to be hired, like have in-game adjustments like that, that's something we've really lacked. With Bill O'Brien, we sucked at in-game adjustments. Sometimes we would come in. If we were at halftime, I think we were like 31 and or 31, and we had some crazy record at halftime if we were leading. But if we were losing at halftime, our record wasn't really that great. Like we wouldn't rarely have comebacks. That could be huge for us if you can have a coach that can make in-game adjustments, change the game plan around at halftime, have a bad first quarter, come back in the second quarter, hit him back. Like that would be very, very good for us. And Brian Flores can do just that as his proof.
Yeah, I think to me there's a lot of logic if the Texans were to hire Brian Flores, because I feel like part of the reasons why they fired David Culley is because someone unexpectedly became available in Brian Flores. Like no one really saw Brian Flores getting fired. So him becoming available, I feel like that also led to part of the decision why Culley got fired, because they could have easily just like kept Cully, because we're not going to be it's likely that we're not going to be very good next season either. So our main issue is like we just need more talent on the team. So I mean, I feel like that was part of the reason. Obviously, Cully wasn't the most perfect coach, but I feel like that was one of the reasons. And also him being like the New England background, I feel like he wouldn't have that power struggle with Nick Casario, as since both were from New England. Obviously, Nick Casario is a very hands-on general manager. I'm not sure how Brian Flores would like that. Would he not mind it? I don't know. But I feel like I feel like their visions would align, saying how they're both from New England. And Brian Flores has the unique resume of being a scouting assistant and a pro scout, both when Nick Casario was in New England. And so, I mean, I wouldn't mind Brian Flores at all. I mean, if he's still available, I feel like we should definitely be talking to him for a second interview if we haven't already. So I also want to pose a question to y'all. It was like rumored earlier that Brian Flores and Deshaun Watson had a relationship, but apparently like then they didn't have each other's phone numbers or whatnot. But if Deshaun Watson wants to play for Brian Flores and say the Texans hire Brian Flores, how would y'all feel about a possibility that Deshaun Watson changes his mind and plays for the Texans again?
Well, how would I feel about it? I would love it because you have to put emotions aside and just, play football sometimes. And Deshaun Watson, in my opinion, is a top three quarterback in the NFL. Regardless if he missed last season, you could probably make an argument that the top three quarterbacks now would be Mahomes, Allen, and Rodgers. I feel like Watson is just right up there with them. But the possibility to me is like a 5% chance. And I think the relationship between Deshaun Watson and Kyle McNair is irreplaceable. But I would love to see Deshaun Watson come back and play again because that just completely changes the whole perspective and the whole future of the Texans. The timeline of rebuild is shorter. You have the quarterback in place. He's only 26 years old, and he's a complete superstar. No debate behind that at all. I would love Deshaun Watson, the football player, to come back.
Yeah. All I mean, as far as hypotheticals, I would absolutely love that. I know this, but if Watson is and what he's probably can become, I mean, he can, but like the chances of that are probably very slim. Deshaun Watson's a proven winner. He's won. He's been to multiple playoff games for us. Winning season, he showed he can lead the passing yards as a player. It's all you can ever ask for. As a leader, I mean, as a player, he's as much as you can ever ask for. And he's going to give you the best chance to win between the two quarterbacks. Like a quarterback that's already mostly polished, a guy who's shown he can win without any weapons. And as Drew was saying, it just speeds up the rebuild even more. Say we really, really hit on pick number 3, whether it's Evan Neal, Kyle Hamilton, maybe Kayvon Thibodeau falls. That could be the second franchise player behind. Like we can have franchise players, one on offense, whether it's Deshaun, one on defense, whether it's Hamilton or Kayvon, and we can really build something truly special. Like as their team, as we look at it right now, if we add Deshaun Watson into the mix, it's really not terrible. I mean, it's terrible, but like if we can add a few more pieces through the draft, have an okay free agency, like we're back to the playoffs within the next 2 years. If we trade Deshaun Watson for picks, I mean, it would probably take a couple years longer for a rebuild. But yeah, as far as Deshaun Watson, the player, I would absolutely love to have it back. I'd love to have him back. But is it really gonna happen? I mean, there's a chance, as you were saying, like you said, like a 5% chance. I would probably put it like around the same. But yeah, I would 100% love if he were to come.
Yeah, I feel like it seems like the bridges have been burned, but if Cal McNair were to say like, "Hey, I hired this coach for you because you wanted him," it could be like a way of like giving him like I don't know, an olive branch or whatnot. But honestly, it's just like a lot of the fan base is very have moved past him. They just want him gone. Whatever the case may be. Even I've even heard that even if he is like innocent, they still want him gone or whatnot. Like we won't comment on the legal issues because nothing. There's no new developments yet. But whatever happens in that case, it'll be interesting to see how our head coaching decision could be impacted by the possibility of Watson. And so yeah, so that's about Flores. And now let's talk about I think another guy who could be on one of our finalists, and Kevin O'Connell. So like as y'all know, the Texans haven't hired anyone for head coach, and one of the guys that we are interested in is Kevin O'Connell, who's still in the playoffs. And so the fact that we haven't hired anyone makes me want to think that we're just waiting for him to become available. But then again, like Schefter reported that we interviewed O'Connell, but the Texans didn't officially report the interview. So it makes you think, like, did it actually happen or whatnot? So I'm wondering about that. But Kevin O'Connell would probably be one of my favorite guys for us, like being coaching under Sean McVay, offensive coordinator for the Rams. He shows a lot of promise. Drew and Roman, what do you think about O'Connell?
I think he's a really bright young offensive mind. He's got a lot of experience. I think the things that stand out to me is that he was drafted by the Patriots in 2008. Nick Casario was pretty much the de facto general manager at the time. His quarterback coach was Josh McDaniels. And he credits McDaniels a lot for his coaching career. So I feel like he could bring aspects of both the Los Angeles offense and a little bit of the grit from the New England team, a little bit of the New England offense, I guess, because he knows a lot of that since his offensive coordinator was McDaniels. And I think that he's got a lot of room to grow. In 2019, he was the Redskins offensive coordinator. Keep in mind, they had a horrible offense at the time. They ranked 21st in total offense. To me, that's kind of impressive. And then, of course, he went to the Rams. In 2020, the offense was ranked 17th. And in 2021, this season, they're ranked 8th. I think it just goes to show you the improvement there is because he probably had a lot more input in that offense, being that this was his second year there. The coaching staff's more comfortable with him. McVay's more comfortable with him. And we also know that O'Connell doesn't necessarily call the plays, but he does call the first 15 plays, what are called the scripted plays. So any opening drives, all credit to O'Connell, which they've scored many touchdowns on. And of course, he can bring some of that offense to Houston, which would be really beneficial. This is, of course, a West Coast scheme, which Davis Mills should be pretty comfortable with in his time at Stanford. And the West Coast is kind of like a lot of play action, a lot of zone running scheme, a lot of check downs, which is really good for Davis Mills, who's pretty decent in the intermediate passing game. He's got a really quick release that can help with that. And he can definitely move around. Another guy who could really benefit from a West Coast scheme would be Brandon Cooks, who is like Cooper Kupp, really, really good in space. Cooper Kupp pretty much gets a free release off the ball every single time in the Rams offense. If that's in motion, if that's him at the wide position, him in the slot, even sometimes at the outside position, he's going to get a free release. He's going to get the opportunity to move around in space, be creative with his routes, something Brandon Cooks is very good at. So I think if you bring that offense in, your offense will be set for years to come in a great scheme with a really good young offensive head coach. In terms of the staff that he can bring, I'm not really sure yet. Some people say he could bring Wade Phillips, the former Texans defensive coordinator, back as his defensive coordinator. Of course, he's getting a little bit old, but that experience as a defensive coach would be really helpful here. And of course, you could keep some of the Texans staff members on. You never know. Pep Hamilton does have a background in the West Coast scheme, but Kevin O'Connell is definitely someone the Texans are going to take a look at. Like you said, the interview wasn't necessarily announced, but neither was Josh McCown's second interview. It wasn't technically announced by the Texans either. So I think the Texans will keep looking at Kevin O'Connell. We'll hear more about him in the coming days, but I think he's a really exciting candidate.
Yeah, hiring an offensive-minded head coach would be huge for this football team. Obviously we've lacked offense. Last season with Davis Mills, but hiring that type of coach, offensive-minded head coach that runs the West Coast offense, as Drew was saying, I feel like Davis Mills would really, really strive in a West Coast offense. Something that's not too complex. Those short, intermediate throws, those quick throws, those screen plays, those screens to the running back, those swing passes to the running back. There's a bunch of different things you can do in a West Coast offense, and I feel like Davis Mills would be the perfect quarterback for that. You're not gonna have to ask too much of Davis in a West Coast type of scheme. Get him a couple of playmakers that he would really feel comfortable with. Maybe Brevin Jordan can really develop into a stable tight end, and we can do a bunch of different things. And then as far as play calling, sure he may not call all the plays, but as you were saying, he calls like the first 15 or so plays, and that's what really really kind of I guess, makes it for him. Like, I'm sure he has a bunch of say in the game plan through the week, like what type of plays they're gonna call, the play designs, and all of that. And from the summer, from training camp, like designing the plays, all of that. Like, I'm sure he has a major, major involvement in that. And if we can bring some of that to Houston, maybe use Brandon Cooks as like a Cooper Cup type of role. Maybe we use. We have a bunch of different things that we can do. Like, we have a bunch of smaller wide receivers, and Davis Mills has shown that he favors and kind of loves these smaller slot wide receivers. We saw with Danny Amendola his last game, this previous season, but I think he had like over 100 yards. I think he had like what two touchdowns, something like that. But if we can get another smaller slot receiver and younger playmaker, really use him as that Cooper Cup type of role, or maybe that Robert Woods before he went out injured, or even that Odell Beckham type of role. Like, there's a bunch of different things you can do in a West Coast offense. And as far as relationship with players, a bunch of players have shown that there's not really too much out there, I guess, in terms of like players being like having a relationship with him. But from the stuff that we have heard, he seems like a very good guy, very friendly with the players, a fun environment. He tries to match the players' energy and all of that. Something that we can really, really use. So right now, my top two guys are probably KOC and then of course Jonathan Gannon. So yeah, I wouldn't really mind the hire at all. It's one of my top two guys right now.
Yeah, and he's just like very highly respected among the league. Like Staley wanted him for on the Chargers staff, but McVay blocked him from doing so, and he was promoted to OC pretty quickly in Washington. And so yeah, so he's very popular. He got head coach interviews with the Broncos and Vikings. Obviously, the Broncos made their hire in Nathaniel Hackett, Green Bay Packers offensive coordinator. But same also Gannon, he got interviews with the Broncos and Vikings, same thing. So those two guys are touted among the league as pretty fast risers, future head coach candidates if not hired in this cycle. So yeah, and the McVay coaching tree was looking really promising. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor, Brandon Staley, Chargers head coach, Packers head coach Matt LaFleur. So all those guys, they're looking to be pretty promising. Some of them may have obviously like Aaron Rodgers. So some people like attribute a lot of LaFleur's success to that. Um, but yeah, I think Kevin O'Connell is really promising. He's probably one of my favorites. So yeah, so those are the finalists for the head coach position. I feel like Lombardi, who we interviewed, we haven't heard anything about him in the past few days. So definitely not him, and hopefully not Hines Ward if he just come out of nowhere. We did interview both of them on the same day or something. But I don't think either of the two are the finalists. So I'm thinking it's down to Gannon, Flores, O'Connell. Hopefully, hoping that interview goes well, and sadly Josh McCown. But we'll see what happens then. But yeah, let's move on to our next topic, and let's talk about the Senior Bowl. So the Senior Bowl is 2 days away, and you would think that the Texans should make a head coaching hire sooner rather than later, so like the Texan scouts know what to look for. But Drew or Roman, are there any guys playing in the Senior Bowl that you are looking out for?
Oh yeah, and I'll go ahead and give y'all a guy from each position. So the number one running back for me, it's been for a while, is James Cook, the running back out of Georgia. He does a lot of things. He's definitely the best running back out of the backfield, catching passes. He's been lined up even at receiver sometimes in like an empty set. He's really, really good at that. He can really stop and go on a dime. He's got great cutting ability. I think that to me, cutting ability, good hands, it just makes him so versatile, and that's why he's my number one running back right now. Of course, other than Kenneth Walker, who's not a senior, but he is my best running back at the Senior Bowl. He's really good. And I forgot about quarterback, but I'll go with I guess I'll go with Kenny Pickett. He's not like super, super special at everything, but he's got great accuracy. He's got the ability to throw on the run, an improviser, really smart guy, can read the field. I think he's going to go really, really early in the draft. I would personally say I take him late in the first, probably with the Steelers. He is currently let's see here. I think he is 25th on my board overall. So that's just something to think about. My number one receiver from the Senior Bowl is by far Jahan Dotson from Penn State. Really fast guy, can play out of the slot. Struggles a little bit on the outside due to his side, but overall, he's a really, really solid receiver. Got a lot of boom potential from him. And then tight end wise, a guy who's been getting a lot of hype recently is Trey McBride, the tight end from Colorado State. He's a really, really good athlete, decent routes, decent blocking. I think he's the most well-rounded tight end at the Senior Bowl. Offensive lineman, we got Daniel Falili from Minnesota. He's 6'7", an absolute unit. A guy who should be getting a ton of looks by NFL scouts. He's got a lot of raw potential. Same for Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa. Both pretty tall tackles. They aren't necessarily the most technically sound guys, but you cannot ignore their size and their production, especially in the run game. Those guys are fantastic. Edge rusher, I got to go with my guy, Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State. He is probably better than Owa, the edge rusher from Penn State last year that got drafted to the Ravens. Both are physically monsters, honestly. Very physically sounded, very technically sounded. A really, really good edge rusher that's going to put up amazing numbers even in his rookie season. Defensive line, got Zachary Carter. He's kind of a mixed bag. You can play him as like a 3-tech. You can play him on the edge. You can play him as a 4-3 defensive end. A lot of things you can do with Zachary Carter, the defensive end from Florida. And then linebacker, I'm going to have Damone Clark, kind of a sideline-to-sideline linebacker. Can play all over the field, good in coverage. Also, Devin Lloyd is there. I'm not exactly sure if he's even going to play, because Devin Lloyd, for me, is number 5 on my board. Just one of the best linebackers I've seen come out in a while. Cornerback, will go with Kobe Bryant. He played alongside Sauce Gardner at Cincinnati. Both guys had a fantastic season. Kobe Bryant's, like Sauce Gardner, is very, very physical, really good in man coverage. And then safety, Jaquan Brisker is just, he hits so hard. That man is special. He made a lot of plays for Penn State, a little bit on the aggressive side as a player, but I think that he's going to be a really good safety in the NFL. And that would be my guys for the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, as far as my guys, I'm gonna just give a couple guys that I like, not really a position. But I'm starting off at number 1. I'm gonna go with Devin Lloyd. As far as Drew said, I don't really think he plays too much. He plays a couple of snaps, but not too many plays. He doesn't really want to get hurt, of course. Maybe risk lowering his draft stock with an injury or something like that. But Devin Lloyd, he can really come in here and he can be easily that linebacker number 1, like that linebacker that's kind of the core of your linebacking core. But yeah, he's a very good linebacker. He can stop the run. He can play a little bit of pass coverage. He can pretty much do it all. And especially with Utah, he really showed he can drop back into coverage. He really showed really a lot of promise this past season in pass coverage. But yeah, as far as linebackers, that's one of my guys. Roger McCreary, cornerback from Auburn. If he could fall maybe like to the second round type of thing, maybe the Houston Texans could get him with one of the picks from a future Deshaun Watson trade, or maybe Larry Tunsil trade or something like that. But he's kind of more so of a, I guess, man corner. He can play some zone as well. But as far as how it would fit into our scheme, Tampa 2, I don't really know. But we're just gonna draft on talent, of course. We're not really drafting for a scheme. We're just trying to get the best player available. But yeah, Roger McCreary, of course. Trevor Penning, offensive tackle, Northern Iowa. He could also be an option for us, maybe late first, early second type of thing. Like if we were to trade Laramie Tunsil, we could draft him, easily plug him into left tackle, or maybe even right tackle, depending on what we want to do with Titus. And then another guy, Darian Kennard, a guy that can just be plugged into the interior offensive line. And that's something that we really, really lack, the interior offensive line. As far as tackles, currently, we're pretty good on tackles. We got Laramie Tunsil, yet to be determined if he's going to be traded, which seems like he will. We got Titus Howard, very good, young, promising tackle. He can play right tackle, he can play left tackle. He's shown he can play a little bit of left guard. And then, of course, Garyon Christian. Solid depth piece, nothing crazy, nothing you can really, I guess, build around. But he can start a couple games for you if needed, like if a guy gets hurt or something. Darion Kendrick from Georgia, cornerback. He used to be a guy that could possibly fall to the third round. Honestly, I see him going more so in the second. But if we can get him somewhere in between there, he would really be a boost to our cornerback room. And honestly, I can really see us going cornerback around there. Like first round, I think we go maybe Kyle Hamilton at 3 or maybe one of the edges if one of them fall. But as far as cornerback, I don't think we'd really target one in the first unless maybe like Sauce or Booth fall to our second first or something like that. But De'Aaron Kendrick should really be a cornerback to watch for second, third round. And then as far as edge, Jermaine Johnson, Florida State. He's a very good, I guess, hybrid type of player. He's probably gonna end up going in the first round, late first round, maybe mid second, early second, somewhere around there. But Jermaine Johnson, he's a hell of a player. Think of him like a kind of like a Montez Sweat type of guy, maybe. Very good in terms of like I guess power rushing. He has a few pass rushing moves, but he's just a guy that you can draft, put around with Jonathan Bernard, Malik Collins at D tackle, something like that. But those are just a couple of guys that I really like that we should really keep an eye on at the Senior Bowl and through the whole draft process.
Yeah, Nick Cassero and his scouts definitely have a lot of work cut out for them. And speaking of intriguing prospects, we're going to do a mock draft, and so let me go ahead and start it. So, okay, so in this mock, as expected, the Jags take Aiden Hutchinson, and the Lions take Kavion Thibodeau. So we have the third pick in the draft. I know a lot of people were saying like we should probably trade down, which seems like a very likely option if both the top edge rushers are gone. Seeing how we do need a lot of talent on the team, so that could be a possibility. But since we're not doing trades in this mock, it seems like we should go with Hamilton. I think. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Kyle Hamilton is gonna have to be the pick here. I mean, always depends on what the Texans' plans are. Are they gonna get offensive lineman in like the free agency or whatever? But I think Kyle Hamilton's the best player in the draft, and I think he's like a can't miss prospect.
Yeah, he's obviously the best choice there available. We could also go Eric Stingley, but personally, I'm not really too high on him. I honestly think he could fall out of the top 10, like fall maybe to like the teens. But Kyle Hamilton, the obvious choice there. I guess you could also go Evan Neal. So, I mean, I wouldn't say obvious. It just depends on what type of head coach we hire. If we get like a Gannon or like a Brian Flores type of thing, they're probably going to want to go defense, add another franchise changing piece to the defense, whether it be Kyle Hamilton or whichever edge falls if they are to fall. Or if you go like maybe like a Gannon, or I'm not Gannon, a KOC, maybe kind of wants to go in the offensive department, gets Mills some blocking guys, which Evan Neal could definitely be a possibility. But I feel like Kyle Hamilton probably the obvious choice.
Yeah, and yeah, like Drew said, he's like a top prospect on a lot of people's boards. And seeing how New England has drafted from the back to front, they're not really investing in superstar talent at edge, but more so at like linebacker or safety. It seems like Kyle Hamilton might align with Nick Casero's vision for the defense. So it makes a lot of sense. And if he's a very NFL ready prospect, can't go wrong with this pick here. And as far as like Stingley, a lot of people are even putting Sauce Gardner over him and Andrew Booth Jr. over Derek Stingley. And most of the reason is because of like his injury history and not being able to produce how he did in his freshman season. So there's a lot of questions around Stingley, but he does go fourth in this mock to the Jets. So yeah. So now let's just wait and see who's available for the second round. This might be more so like a best player available situation, in my opinion, as is like most of these picks. But let's see. So Nakobe Dean is still available at 37. I think he's very intriguing. Daxton Hill, Drake London, who's very dynamic. What do you guys think here at 37?
I think that since the Texans have so many like older type linebackers, Kamu, Kirksey, of course they drafted Wallow, but I don't know if he'll necessarily develop into like a starting linebacker. But man, Nakobe Dean is seventh overall on my board. I think that's just got to be the guy you go for. He's a physically gifted linebacker, sideline to sideline guy, really really good in coverage. He can also he has that rare ability to be able to blitz and get to the quarterback. He's a great leader. He can play any three linebacker positions and kind of like Kyle Hamilton. He's a can't miss prospect. Shouldn't drop to the second round, but his size could be a little bit of a problem. Otherwise, love what Nakobe Dean brings to any team.
Oh yeah, for me right here is between three players: Nakobe Dean, Jermaine Johnson, who I just talked about, going to the Senior Bowl, and then Kyrie Elam. Kyrie Elam is still there. He's probably gonna go late first, maybe early second type of thing. I feel like some team is definitely gonna maybe take a chance on him late first, maybe the Packers. They have a bunch of cornerback depth, of course. But it doesn't. Maybe not the Packers, but maybe some team late in the first round. They're definitely gonna take a shot on him. But yeah, I just feel like Kobe Dean, you just can't pass him up right here. He's probably most likely gonna go top 20. I don't know why he's really falling in this mock. Probably just because of his size, I guess. Maybe this mock website is too fond of him because of his size. But yeah, he's definitely the best player available right here. Getting another linebacker, um, getting a linebacker and a safety so far in this draft would be really, really huge. Both franchise type of players, both players you can get in right away and play. And yeah, that would just be both franchise anchors on your defense.
Yeah, I know, like y'all said, like Nakobe Dean falling all the way to 37 is pretty crazy. Like, I mean, we saw that like last year with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. That was a different issue, obviously, with his heart. But he was a very good player this year. So a lot of people who we think will like go in the first round just for some reason end up falling in. So Nakobe Dean falling all the way to 37 is a huge steal for us, in my opinion. So yeah, like y'all said, can't miss draft there. So far the draft is looking great. Kyle Hamilton, Nakobe Dean. So maybe Nick Casario decides to switch it up and go offense in this next pick. So we'll see about that. All right. So at 68, let's see who we have. Let's see. Let's go to let's see. Is there any position y'all want to take a look at on who's available?
Yeah, probably the interior defense line. I see a lot of my defensive guys there, ironically, but I think the Texans definitely gonna have to address offensive line at some point.
Let's see. Zachary Carter from Florida. Let's see who's available on inside the line. Tyler Smith.
Yeah, Tyler Smith is actually a pretty good guy. I think he's did play a little bit of tackle though. So if you want to click on Tyler Smith's draft profile real quick. Yeah. Yeah, he did play a little bit of left tackle, which sometimes I do transition while it's a guard, but no doubt he definitely has the physical attributes to play guard.
Well,
And, and
your guy Nick Benito is available. It seems like we draft him every mock draft.
yeah, I don't. We'll mix it. We'll mix it up this time.
Yeah, let's mix it up. But yeah, let's see. Some guys who I thought would end up falling, like we're really close to Mechie. Sawyer is pretty good inside the line. Just like barely missed some of these guys. Let's see.
Go to wide receiver real quick. So Wando Robinson is actually there. Maybe it's a little bit too early to take him. Maybe not. It just depends how I guess scouts see him. But he's a possible weapon that could really be valuable in this offense, especially if we hire KOC. We can use him as a slot type of guy. Give him the ball in space, do a bunch of jet sweeps, do a bunch of screens, do a bunch of quick throws to him. Just put the ball in his hands, and he's gonna work magic. I feel like Wando Robinson would be perfect in a West Coast type of offense. But it just kind of depends what we really want to do. Do we want to go interior defensive line, which we're probably going to resign Malik Collins, maybe Demarcus Walker. We still got Ross Blacklock. We still got Roy Lopez. Interior offensive line, I feel like either interior offensive line or Wando Robinson would probably be the mover here. Just bolster up the offense. We just went defensive last two picks with Kyle Hamilton and then, of course, no Kobe Dean. But right here, I feel like getting a weapon or, of course, getting an interior offensive line would really be valuable to this football team.
Yeah, and there's also James Cook, who Drew mentioned, who he's like probably one of his favorite running backs. Do you think we should go him or running back in the third? A lot of people just think like, oh, just get running back in like the 6th round or 7th round. No need to spend like a day 1 or day 2 pick on running back. So there's a lot of mixed opinion on running back for sure. I think we should go O-line, but so should we go with Tyler Smith?
Yeah, we can go Tyler Smith. In terms of running backs, I think the third round is a good spot. If this is a guy you really, really love, you take him in like the second round. But man, it's so hard to just go in the first and take running backs nowadays.
All right, so let's just go ahead and get Tyler Smith from Tulsa. So beefing up that O line, and we do have another third round pick at pick 80. So let's see who's available at the top of the board. Let's see. So it seems like a lot of linebackers are still available that are still pretty, like Damone Clark, Jojo Doman, Chad Muma. Sorry about that. Nehemiah Pritchett is also a name who I've seen like get some buzz from Auburn. Let's see. Any names stand out to you? Or should maybe Wandale? Is Wandale still? Oh, he got taken up in by the Falcons. So that's a
Definitely, either Brandon Smith or Zachary Carter. Zachary Carter can definitely play anywhere on the defensive line. So he's 285, but he can definitely be a 4-3 defensive end if he has to. Which, especially if the Texans like don't go for like Kayvon or Aiden, we don't know if they're going to be there or not. The Texans are definitely going to have to address the edge position just to put somebody besides Jonathan Grenard.
Yeah, I feel like Zachary Carter. Zachary Carter would really be nice here. We kind of wanted to draft him with our last pick, our last third rounder. Getting him right here would probably be better value, of course. Getting another interior defensive line. Yeah, I feel like he would be pretty solid here.
All right, so let's go with Zachary Carter. So I think this is a fantastic draft. He solidified the trenches, get really like a steal in Nakobe Dean, Kyle Hamilton, a can't miss prospect seems like. So obviously, so I think this is a great draft in 3 rounds. So Hamilton, Nakobe Dean, Tyler Smith, Zachary Carter. I think it's a fantastic draft. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for the video. Let us know your thoughts on this podcast. We talked about a lot of things like the head coach, Senior Bowl coming up, and we did a mock draft. So let us know what you all think about those topics in the comment section below. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Thank y'all for watching. Peace.